After almost 12,000 streams, we're going to be tearing this track apart layer by layer. My name is Max, I'm the main producer to Barrier to Entry, and let's get into it. Starting with the most important part, the kick and the bass. So I just pulled this sample from Splice. Sounds like this. Absolutely nothing to it, just kept it how it was. I like this kick because it has a really nice little transient here and a clean sine wave. So I don't really like when the kick has too much going on. It makes it way more complicated trying to get the phasing. When working with the kick and the bass, I find that working with an oscilloscope is super useful. Just seeing the kick right there. I added a nice wide sub layer, and we can see the relationship here. So you can see on the oscilloscope that there's no phase cancellation, and I did that by just taking out some of the lows, the subs on the side, on the wide sub, as well as checking with a correlometer, which is really useful. I think this is a free plugin, and you can see that this wide sub is still mono in the bass, but still has side information, so it doesn't interfere with the phasing. And we can see that together using a sidechain. Perfect. Now going on to the main bass line. This is just a splice sample. You can find it here that I chopped up. And I chopped it up because it just didn't fit the vibe, and I wanted it to be a little bit more bouncy. So altogether on the main bass, I just did a small amount of sub reduction and just simple side chain from the kick, and all three sound together like this. All right, moving on to the drums. I used just more splice samples just to clap here. And hi-hat loop, shaker loop, another shaker loop, and I think the most characteristic part of this song is this small perk sample here. I think that really, when you listen to it with the kick and the bass, that is really gives it character. I think that it was like one of my favorite elements in the song. When we're DJing live, you hear that cut through the mix, you instantly know it's the song. Now let's look at the main drop synth here. And that is just a serum patch from a Sam Smyers pack. It's actually a Fisher song. It's just a dual saw wave, super wide, and what I was doing was I automated the pitch bend. So you can see here, pitch bend up by 2 semitone, and then for the second part of the drop here, this synth, it's the same patch here, but instead I'm actually pitching it down. I'm starting at 12 semitones up, so a full octave, and then pitching it down to the root note. And then at the end, I kind of just lift it up by maybe half a semitone. You can hear it again really specifically. Right there. So I like this. I used kind of this super wide saw just to kind of catch everybody off guard in the drop. And live, we've tested it, and it hits. Moving on to some of the more accent synths, I wanted the track to have a lot of atmospheric effects, so I always look for samples that sound kind of similar to this. So I really like this sample. Super wide, kind of gives like the, I like contrast between like the choppy tech house drums and the bass line and like kind of the more techno elements. I chose these 2 call and response here. So it's the same sample, it's just chopped. And then I always like to add like kind of a deeper stab sound, kind of just on the offbeat, so you can hear them all together here. This is kind of like bum boom boom. The next lead synth here, I just picked that because it sounded good in the track, nothing really special. As well as the main lead synth that I bring into the first variation of the verse. So very simple EQ just to make the highs a little bit brighter, and then I just clipped off some of the top here because the transient was a little loud. And then in the second part of the song I do a small variation here, so instead of it being a full sample, so I kind of chop it, and I think I used, so I pulled back some of the transient. I just used the beat here, switching it to this mode, and then just pulling 50%, so it makes it just a little bit more snappy. So you can hear the difference in context. So it's just a little bit more bouncy. So I think that kind of fit. It just like a small variation. It was getting a little bit too repetitive, and then small variations. And finally, let's look at the vocal, which is a very, I would say, popular vocal. You can just find it on Splice right here, and everybody's heard this before. Bring me the heat. This beat on repeat. Max Styler had used this vocal, and in the second drop, using an accent vocal, I used this technique using an arpeggiator and automating the rate to basically speed up a section of the sample. And we can hear that here, looking at the automation curve. Kind of like in Drugs from Amsterdam. But this in context sounds really good. But I want to highlight one thing here with the compressor, is I found that the main vocal and this kind of accent vocal were fighting with each other. So I just sidechained the main vocal with the compressor. So you should be able to see it right there. So when the main vocal comes in, the accent vocal ducks out. And then I just did a few more automations here on the dry wet and the auto filter to kind of pull it out. So one more thing that I like to do on my drops is just using the washout. This is really just pulling the bass out, kind of like how you would do live DJing. Throw in a little bit of reverb, cut the bass a little bit, but it's in this one singular plugin. You don't need this plugin, but it makes it definitely really useful just as a singular knob. All right, now let's add each layer and build them upon each other to see how they all add together in the second drop. Just super stinky. And that's pretty much it. That's the heat. If you like this video, drop a comment down below on what you'd like to see broken down next, and you can find the heat extended mix for free on our SoundCloud.